to amplify progressive perspectives that are community-focused and solution-oriented. So go to KBLA1580.com right now to download all the information you need about our guest editorials. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. I just don't know where to begin with this major distraction that is the Jeffrey Epstein files. What I can share with you is, other than the victims, which is a very, very serious concern, and their security, all of the files should be released. We need to know the truth. We need to know everyone who was involved in what can only be described as a heinous crime against young people, against the rule of law, and against humanity at its core. Donald Trump's going to do everything he can to distract us from the facts of what occurred in the Jeffrey Epstein case. And so, do we trust the Department of Justice to release all the files? I don't know. Do we trust the courts to release grand jury testimony? I don't think so. Do we trust anyone in this process? The DOJ sending its top lawyer, Donald Trump's former lawyer, personal lawyer, to meet with Ghislaine Maxwell for 2 days while in confinement, and then moving her to a Texas prison, a more posh location than the one she was in? Do we trust her testimony before the Congress of the United States, if in fact she does testify pending the outcome of the Supreme Court's decision in her case? Can we trust the Roberts Court not to throw her case out entirely on the basis of the grounds for which she is appealing her conviction? We just don't know. What we do know is that all branches of government are involved, and because every branch of government is involved in this particular administration, it looks like each branch is framing a house. Not a conspiracy upon which they all agreed, but a conspiracy in that when they frame one piece of the house, and the Supreme Court frames the other piece of the house, and the courts frame another piece of the house, and the executive frames another piece of the house, somehow when they all come together, it forms a perfect square. How possible is that? Unless there is an agreement to which none of us as American people are a party to. I want to shift our focus for just a moment in this first segment to the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and some of the challenges that are represented by what is taking place in Texas and the part that we're missing, the liberal reaction. The vast majority of African Americans vote for Democrats. But it is the liberal reaction in the liberal states, in the Democratic states, where African American representatives are looking at the possibility of having their districts redrawn in such a way as to move majority minority voters out of these districts to create more competitive districts for conservative Democrats. Conservative Democrats in the Congress do not represent the interests of African Americans. In fact, they have one foot in the MAGA world and the other foot in our community, balancing interests. Sometimes they'll vote conservative when it comes to economic issues, but then they'll vote progressive on issues like choice for women and progressive on some civil rights legislation. But then they'll keep one foot in the conservative economic world and vote for fewer budgets and less government. But then they keep just enough on our side of town to fight for just enough of the environment to keep us from complaining about their absence on critical issues that matter to all of us. That's what we're looking at here. Our voices. And whether or not our voices matter going forward in their present form. Have you ever been to a meeting with one of your friends, and when they're in your presence, they talk a lot of jive, their tone is a little different, but when they get around certain people, their voices change? When they take you around certain friends, their voices and their mannerisms change? Oh, we can shuck and jive when it's just us, but when we are around certain other people, we are practicing the king's English and the queen's language, showing our utmost better selves, our more sophisticated personage. Do you want a member of Congress who stands up, or a senator who stands up for the truest and highest ideals of what our struggle represents from 1619 to the present? Or do you want some mealy-mouthed representative who says yes, says no, abstains, and comes back and explains to you what they did? Changing 62 congressional districts across this country, 56 Hispanic districts across this country, could yield for us uncertain voices. When we come forward, we're going to hear from a very strong voice in the movement for social change, Bishop Joseph Tolton. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Is reviewing life insurance on your to-do list? Now's the perfect time to add it. A friend recently told me that securing life insurance sooner rather than later can help you lock in lower rates for years to come. So I bumped this up on my list and got it done. I called SelectQuote and couldn't believe how easy and affordable life insurance is. I'm 40 and got a $500,000 policy for $16 a month. My husband's also 40 and his $500,000 policy was only $18 a month. Plus, with SelectQuote's same-day coverage, there was no medical exam required, and we were covered by the time we hung up. Knowing I have this checked off my list feels amazing, but the peace of mind knowing my family is protected feels even better.
Call SelectQuote at 1-800-729-7070. That's 1-800-729-7070. Or go to SelectQuote.com to get your free quote today. That's 1-800-729-7070. Details on example rate at SelectQuote.com.
Are you wet shaving? You'll get razor bumps.
Nah, Pops, I'm good with Gillette Skin Guard. How long you been growing that beard Mama hates anyway?
Since 77, I shaved and got ingrown so bad.
That's why I use the Gillette Skin Guard razor, face scrub, shave gel, and moisturizer. So I don't have to worry about new razor bumps or shaving irritation.
Gillette Skin Guard, huh? Your mama's gonna love this one.
The best a man can get keeps getting better with Gillette Skin Guard. Buy now at a retailer near you.
You gotta dip your chicken strips. Hey, this is Kiani.
And this is Tabitha.
And a little thing we love about Chick-fil-A chicken strips
is all the different sauces we can dip them in. I like to line up all my favorite sauces so that in every bite, I have a different flavor. Then with the tenderness of the chicken, the juiciness of it, it's all there.
And for me, I like to mix my sauces so I get a little tang and I get a little sweetness all in one bite.
That's what makes it for me. Like, that's what does it for me.
That's what I'm saying.
It's the summer of Chick-fil-A chicken strips and sauces. Order now on the Chick-fil-A app. Real guests paid for their testimonials.
This is the story of the one. As a safety manager at a manufacturing plant, he does everything he can to keep his coworkers safe. From finding ways to reduce risks to keeping safety supplies in stock. And for that, he relies on Grainger. Grainger offers a broad range of quality products and next-day delivery, so he can always play it safe. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
An official message from Medicare.
I turned 65 this year. I knew it was time to figure out Medicare, and I had questions like when to enroll and how to enroll. So I went straight to the official source, Medicare.gov, to get the facts about Medicare. I found answers to all my questions, and I'm ready to get started. And so can you. Just go to Medicare.gov to get the real facts about Medicare.
Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Tuesdays on the Jesse Jackson Jr. On KBLA Talk 1580. Today we have the privilege of having Bishop Joseph Tolton, a global faith leader and foreign policy expert, who brings both moral clarity and strategic insights to this political moment. As the far right and Christian nationalists ramp up their rhetoric, everyone's talking, what do we do about it? Bishop Tolton has answers. Bishop, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
It is such an absolute pleasure to be with you today. I am so deeply grateful for the invitation, Brother Jackson. Thank you again.
It is my honor. Bishop, there is a lot going on in the world. And I mean, from Gaza to the treatment of people at our nation's borders, to the attacks on the Voting Rights Act of 1965, to undermining the basic human rights and civil liberties that we've come to enjoy since Brown versus the Board of Education. Bishop, I'm counting on you in this hour to help offer some clarity. And where do we begin and where do we go from here?
Absolutely. I think it is so important when we take a scan of the horizon of what's happening in our headlines, which is, of course, a presentation of major stories that you have just very articulately spoken to. When we look at all of these issues, we must realize that the nation, and to some degree, geopolitical politics globally, have been captured by a religious movement that at its heart has a very sinister political imperative. And that movement is Christian nationalism. The term is somewhat misleading in that it implies that the movement is solely focused on capturing the American political machine. But we must take a step back and realize the hypocrisy of the idea of Christian nationalism, which implies that there is a concern with purely America. And of course, that relates to the idea of make America great again, when in fact, this Christian nationalist movement is an international and global campaign to reorder our global world order and ultimately to install a kleptocracy globally that really has economic dominion around the world. And it is rooted in a very specific theological idea that I look forward to unpacking more and more with you.
I certainly look forward to that unpacking. I do want to raise this question of provincialism. That is what Americans understand about the domestic movement, and making the distinction for us about how this movement is indeed global. And while the pieces of this global movement may not have been entirely framed in the United States, it has certainly laid the foundation and given credence to, if not, I don't want to say moral momentum, because it's really an immoral proposition, but it's given a certain kind of momentum to movements around the country that are very consistent with your thinking here.
Oh, there's no question about that. The ways in which the American Christian right has emerged and also been a source of funding has certainly not only driven the ways in which that movement has had a certain level of political success here, but also in terms of its tentacles around the world. That is absolutely important for us to understand. One of the things that I want to lift up is that at the heart of Christian nationalism is a desire for economic dominion, which we can often see through the lens of racial injustice. Let me just go back a little bit and talk about kind of the historicity of Christian nationalism as a movement, because it is not new. It was in the 1400s that the then Pope Nicholas gave an edict to the Pope of Portugal, who was Alfonso. And in that edict, he very specifically directed the King of Portugal to be clear that he had not only the right, but the God-given duty to search out, vanquish, and conquer the goods of all of those who were considered to be barbarians, who were considered to be non-Christians and heathens. And so this religious document—
Bishop, is this some kind of doctrine of discovery?
That's exactly correct. That's exactly correct. This was what preceded the doctrine of discovery. And of course, the doctrine of discovery as a spiritual edict is what set off the transatlantic slave trade. And I think it's important for us to see the scheme of the doctrine of discovery. Use a heavy-handed political machine that is driven by a religious imperative to deliver economic outcomes. And so when we even look at the current playbook that's driving Christian nationalism in our own country, I like to lift up that Project 2025 is nothing more than a modern day re-articulation of the doctrine of discovery.
Interesting.
A political document that's driven by religious fervor with the intention of very clear economic outcomes of dominion, which we can see through a very particular racial lens. We are living through this again.
You know, I really appreciate the perspective that you're bringing, because I share with people all of the time that what distinguishes in large measure liberal political thinking from theological, conservative-based white Christian nationalism is they believe this to their core. And they have a faith system that accompanies their political agenda.
That's right.
We have a political agenda that doesn't necessarily comport with a faith system. And maybe for African Americans, those of us who are part of the liberation theological tradition, whether it is Black liberation theology or the ways in which it has presented itself in South America and through Gutierrez and other theologians, and even strongly and more sensitively in the LGBTQ community and the communities that fight to have women and allow women to preach in pulpits, we have a faith-based content to our politics, which from my perspective is the only content in terms of its energy and its momentum that actually rivals what conservative Christian nationalists are actually doing on the polar opposite side of the scale.
There's absolutely. And if I may, as you've lifted up that there is a faith system that accompanies their politics, I might suggest that in fact, their faith system actually powers their politics.
Interesting.
And that for those of us on the left, because we believe in a public square that is open for all, and because we believe in the tenets of democracy, which by default suggests that there are basic human rights which must be conferred on all people, regardless of X, Y, and Z. And we also therefore believe that that democracy must be accompanied by a freedom of conscience and a freedom of thought, right? The great poet Milton said, do anything to me, but take away my ability to think and to conceive freely. And so accompanying the ideals of democracy are the ideals of religious pluralism. And in our desire to create this public square that is a neutral zone, our religious convictions in a particular way so that they do in fact accompany our politics, they don't power them. Whereas on the left, their religious convictions power their political convictions.
I can't begin to tell some of my closest and dear friends just how important that is, because if I'm willing to carry this cross, right, this has to be at the core of my faith. What I believe about healthcare, what I believe about housing, what I believe about the least of these is powered by my faith. And I'm willing to take that places, including into the voting booth, to say I'm going to vote for people who are consistent with my faith. They power my faith. They extend my faith. As Aubrey Hendricks shared with us yesterday on our program, we're going to love our neighbors as ourselves, as more than just a spiritual commandment, but also an economic agenda, something to achieve. I want my neighbor, Bishop Tolton, to be doing as well as I'm doing.
Yes.
And if I'm not doing well enough, I becomes we, and we go, and moves from me to we begin to grow together as part of really a commandment and an exhortation from Christ himself.
And what you've just lifted up is the ethic and the idea of equity. And equity demands a certain level of empathy and a certain commitment to the ideals of generosity, as well as a belief that there is enough for all of us, and that each one of us has a certain due that inalienable rights grant us. For those that are coming from the opposite perspective, they actually believe that instead of providing care for humanity that allows a field of equity, we actually have to control and dominate over resources because the people are not well equipped enough to actually participate in a society that is equitable. They must be governed, lorded over, and ruled by. And that is, again, the imperative of dominionism is lording over.
Let me just share with you that in this moment I'm sitting here listening to, and I feel like, and this is the highest compliment I think I can pay anyone, I feel like I'm sitting here having a conversation with James Baldwin. And I am particularly impressed with your reasoning on the subject matter. Can we travel around the world for just a moment? There is a starvation taking place in the Gaza.
Yeah.
And in light of white Christian nationalism here in the United States, the failure of the two-state solution in the Middle East, the unfortunate and tragic events of October 7th, horrible, horrific terrorist attacks on the Jewish people, and the overwhelmingly devastating response from Benjamin Netanyahu on the people of the Gaza. Your thoughts, and can you offer any moral clarity to us on the nature of that conundrum in this hour?
There is a strain of Christian nationalism that is called Christian Reconstructionism. That particular movement believes that the law of God, and in particular, the law of the Old Testament, must be applied as if it were actually driving or defining our legal system. This commitment to a Christian Zionism is also based in the apocalyptic notion that when Christ returns, Christ must return to Jerusalem, and that Jerusalem has got to be sanctified to allow Christ to return. Jerusalem cannot be sanctified if it is occupied by anyone other than the Jewish people. So there is a perspective.
Bishop, but Jerusalem is in the West Bank. What are you saying? That this movement is going to move from the state of Israel and the boundaries that we presently know to Bethlehem itself?
Well, there's no question that that's the case. That's why Christian Zionists continue to encourage those that are developing settlements in Palestinian territories to do so with impunity, because you must sanctify Israel for the second coming. And ultimately, that's the ultimate interest of dominionists, to stir up and to mobilize their base, by their base being committed to creating a world that ushers in or that readies the second coming of Jesus Christ. When Trump made the statement that he's going to turn Gaza into the Riviera of the Middle East and essentially displace over 2.3 million Gazans, that wasn't just the musings of a former real estate executive who happens to be off the rails. He was actually articulating Christian Zionism and dominionist theology. He was doing it in a very kind of casual way, but underneath his statements was exactly that. And they are driven by this religious imperative, and much of it is about creating or giving opium to their people. They've got to keep the masses in line behind them. They need a constituency base to drive what is ultimately their economic agenda.
Bishop, I'm not trying to make light of a very serious situation, but you've suggested that they're going to keep pressing through to Jerusalem, and the consequences of that are so is Jesus supposed to come back a white guy?
I am sure that that is what they believe. that in fact he will be a reflection of the archetypal white European Jesus that we have come to know through our stories and our Sunday school stories, etc. Yes, that is absolutely the belief. There's no question about that.
Well, wait a minute. What about us? What about us? I mean, what about the oppressed? What about the people to whom the master spoke to in the Gospels? And you're pressing me here to this idea that this archetypal Jesus is to come back a white guy in brown Palestine.
That's right.
I believe in supporting the state of Israel, but the idea that Jesus comes back a white guy is very far from my theological thinking and understanding.
When you look at the complexion of Israelis today, you have many Israelis who are in fact white European Jews, and they believe that Jesus will come back looking like them. So the idea of a Christ who is Jewish, who looks a certain way, is very much so reflected in the complexion of those that overwhelmingly occupy Israel today. Certainly there are Sephardic Jews, but when you even look at Netanyahu's government and those that are driving the policies of the Israeli government at this time, it is absolutely dominated by white European Jews who certainly come with an imperial mentality of their own that is deeply connected to this apocalyptic Zionist theology.
Bishop Tolton, you're about to be a regular contributor on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. This is KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward, more with Bishop Joseph Tolton.
Names. The best conversations. You're riding with Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Misty Jordan with BIN News Now. Democrats who fled Texas to stop congressional redistricting are vowing to fight on. Black Texas Democratic Congressman Al Green said he'll keep fighting.
They'll do it if we only stand by and watch them. But if we take a stand, we can stop them.
Governor Greg Abbott has ordered the state's Department of Public Safety to arrest House Democrats who were not present for the special legislative session Monday. Cat Williams is set to be the on-course correspondent for the PGA Tour event this weekend. Williams will join PGA Tour Live for the FedEx St. Jude Championship in Memphis. Williams will walk the course on Thursday and Friday. And Birmingham, Alabama's black mayor vowed to give some parents $500 each if their kids are in class the first day of school. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Is your concrete cracking? Is your uneven walkway dangerous? Do you need to level that concrete porch or patio? Contact Groundworks, the concrete lifting experts. Riverside, get your free inspection today. Learn more at groundworks.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
When the preseason top 25 college football rankings came out Tuesday morning, USC and UCLA were not included. Neither team impressed the analysts enough to merit a top 25 ranking. USC is coming off a 7-6 season. UCLA was 5-7 last year. Both teams have a lot of work to do this season to change the thinking of college football analysts and their fan base. USC and UCLA are entering their second year in the Big Ten Conference. Administrators at Prairie View A&M and HBCU near Houston had to make a very tough decision. The school dropped its men's and women's tennis programs. The main reason was finances. Players on both teams will be allowed to keep their scholarship if they stay at Prairie View. Things do not seem to be getting any better for Shedeur Sanders with the Cleveland Browns. Deion Sanders listed fourth on the depth chart for the Browns' 5 quarterbacks in training camp. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio that's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Nationwide is so much more than a great insurance company. They're one of America's largest financial services companies. Like how I'm more than Saquon Barkley, the NFL's reigning leading rusher. I'm also the NFL's leading husher. Shh, hush up back there. Wow, I might have just set the hushing record. Well, almost. For your insurance and financial needs, Nationwide is on your side.
Nationwide Investment Services Corporation, member FINRA, Columbus, Ohio.
You have cancer. The 3 words no one wants to hear. Of the cancers that impact our community, lung cancer is the most dangerous. More people succumb to lung cancer than colon, breast, and prostate combined. Black men are 12% more likely to develop lung cancer, and cases for Black women are rising. Early detection and comprehensive treatment is the best way to beat this dreaded disease. Providence is a research leader in multi-cancer early detection, offering blood tests that identify fast-spreading cancers that don't show symptoms in early stages. The Providence Los Angeles Integrated Network Cancer Program determines best protocols for each patient, interacting with specialists who share experiences, perspectives, and new findings specific to each case. With over 1,000 board-certified physicians, including top oncologists, surgeons, radiologists, and nurse specialists, Providence delivers whole-person care that understands your culture, values, preferences, and priorities. So, if you hear the words, "you have cancer," all you need is faith and providence.org/cancer.
Your child is 18, and suddenly you no longer have legal access to their medical info, even in an emergency. No health decisions, no financial help, nothing, unless you plan ahead. That's why Trust and Will created the Young Adult Plan. It includes HIPAA authorization, healthcare directives, and power of attorney. Everything your child needs to stay protected and stay connected. Go to trustandwill.com and get your Young Adult Plan for just $69. Because turning 18 shouldn't mean cutting parents out of the picture. Trust and Will is an online estate planning service. See website for details.
Trust and Will. Some things can steal your sunshine.
Ugh, I just got my hair done.
Sorry, the cooler's broken. Anyone see my flip-flops? Anyone?
But COVID-19 can steal a lot more.
I just took a COVID test. Ugh.
Prescription medications for COVID exist. If you test positive this summer, ask your doctor if they're right for you. Visit PfizerForAll.com/COVID-19 to learn more. Sponsored by Pfizer.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Today's the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. Our very special guest in this hour is Bishop Joseph W. Tolton, a global faith leader, foreign policy expert who brings both moral clarity and strategic insight to this political moment. Bishop Tolton, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you so much.
Bishop, I want to continue going around the world with you for a moment, but I want to come back to this idea of this archetypal Jesus who's supposed to be coming back to Bethlehem. Is he going to be a capitalist? I mean, are we supposed to shower all of the poor's natural resources and minerals upon him to continue the massive inequality and global wealth that seems to accompany white Christian nationalism? Are we supposed to be subservient to this process of this figure that they're hoping comes back born to a virgin?
The elite have a clear outcome in mind, and we must always follow the money. It is economic dominion and it is political authority. But you must have rule over the masses. Therefore, you have to give the masses catnip. And the catnip in this case is the idea of the second coming of Christ and the need to sanctify not only Jerusalem, but really the world for that second coming, so that the hearts and minds of the people are turned toward a particular religious outcome that they can yearn for. This becomes the great distraction, while you then actually steal from that very constituency and hoard wealth to feed a global kleptocracy. This is why you can pass this horrific, big, bad, ugly bill, which is going to undermine the life and the well-being and the economic capacity of the very people who voted for Trump. Now, of course, you hide the impact of the bill until after the election, giving you an opportunity to kind of escape that kind of political pushback. But in time, they will rev up the culture wars again as a way to distract those who are being economically disenfranchised by this bill from that reality. And they speak to the hearts of these people by giving them a war that they can win. You can win the war over the gays. You can win the war in Gaza. You can win the war over the Muslims. You can win the war over those that don't believe. You can even win the war over mothers who want to have reproductive justice. This is about giving the constituency base, the mass constituency base, catnip. They must have a target. They must have a goal. They must have a war that is winnable so that they can be distracted from what's really happening, which is the incredible theft of resources. We've lived in a society since the 80s where income inequality has been staggering. Well, according to Robert Rice, the former labor secretary under Bill Clinton, that is going to move at such a laser speed that we are not going to recognize America in the next 10 to 15 years in terms of the economics of our country. And what will allow all of this? Distract the very people that support those that are responsible for the heists.
I'm sitting here just dumbfounded, and you might have pointed me in a direction now that I haven't given much consideration to, that these religious forces are coming together to justify the authoritarianism, the oligarchy, the kleptocracy. It's all coming together, but under the guise of ultimately one must satisfy the masses. And even though we're picking their pockets, even though, there's only so many more decades or centuries that we can continue, that Jesus is coming back if we don't produce him. Yes. We got to produce him at some point. And before people grow weary of the idea that maybe at the Council of Nicaea and some of the earlier councils, some trickery and skullduggery was at work.
There's no question. When we look at some of the major streams of the Christian nationalist world, and I just want to read off a list of a few of them for the sake of our viewers. There is the New Apostolic Reformation, the Black Robe Regiment, the Wall Builders, the Biblical Voter Movement, and as I mentioned earlier, the Christian Reconstructionist movement. These movements are ultimately interested in the de-democratization of the United States. They want ultimately for the United States to be a theocratic country. They want to destroy the democracy, because if you destroy the public square, if you undo the state, you undo the context in which people have equal access via their voice to actually fight for an economy and a political system that works for all. These religious groups are deeply committed to the de-democratization of the United States, as are a group of billionaires who we call the kind of tech bros. They're equally interested in this same outcome. And so you have both of those levers that are working toward driving that end.
I think that the Republic has survived largely because of the amendment process, including the Bill of Rights, which ultimately has what sustained the country from 1791 to the present. I think that these attacks on the Bill of Rights, freedom of speech, the attacks on the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, the attacks on women having the right to vote, the 19th Amendment. In short, our movements are largely responsible for the democracy itself, that the Republic itself was a very undemocratic, closer to a theocratic state, where they relied upon a single person, assuming this person was of strong moral character. They assumed that was George Washington. If you follow the theological experiment that laid the cornerstone of the republic itself, it seems to me that they've never backed away from this idea that this core is central to their vision of a new Israel. But they saw it here in the United States. Yes. I mean, they did not see it in Bethlehem. That was Palestine for the architects of our republic. Coming here, they felt something quite different.
I do want to honor the fact that I believe that the founding fathers did have a vision for justice and equity. They did have the vision for a secularized nation that could escape the grip of a strong hand from a religious perspective. However, this great experiment of democracy was riddled with all of the inequities and all of the social problems that we are incredibly well aware of. I believe that Jeffersonian democracy manifested itself in Selma. It was actually at that moment when the Voting Rights Act gave access to African Americans that we saw Jeffersonian democracy actually manifest itself. So in this move and slide toward authoritarianism, if you are going to undo America as a democratic state, you've got to go back to the place where it actually became that, and that is Selma. So you must undo the civil rights movement. You must undo the gains of the civil rights movement. You must dismantle the infrastructure of the civil rights movement, and you must demonize Blackness as a political identity, all in the efforts to move the country toward authoritarianism, because our changing demographics are such that a democratic order no longer works for you.
To close out this segment, it was Lyndon Johnson in a special message to Congress on March 15th, 1965. At times, history and fate meet at a single time and a single place to shape the turning point of man's unending search for freedom. So it was at Lexington and Concord. So it was a century ago at Appomattox. So it was last week in Selma, Alabama. Our very special guest is Bishop Joseph Tolton. When we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580, more with the Bishop. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Fatherhood includes being present during pregnancy, delivery, and beyond, supporting your partner and advocating for your baby's health. Black fathers play a key role in reducing maternal and infant health inequalities. Join the free AIM Fatherhood Program and make a difference. Visit blackinfantsandfamilies.org/fatherhood.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Los Angeles Regional Food Bank is on a mission to fight hunger and provide nutritious food to those in need across our community. They partner with federal, state, and local programs advocating for better policies and funding for critical hunger relief programs like Cal Fresh, the Emergency Food Assistance Program, and the Child and Adult Care Food Program. The food bank works with coalitions and local representatives to make sure hunger is addressed in every district of LA County. They also run nutrition education campaigns, raise hunger awareness, and source nutritious food for distribution, all while supporting regulations that allow food pantries to operate safely. Want to help? Visit lafoodbank.org or call 323-234-3030 to volunteer or find a food bank near you. Together, we can ensure that no one goes hungry in Los Angeles County. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
The California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, Black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's calcruisenews.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
See website for details. Bills Happen is not a lender and does not make credit decisions. Hey, bills happen. So when you need extra cash fast, go to billshappen.com. Have you been turned down? Are your credit cards maxed out? Do you have bad credit? Go to billshappen.com. All you need is a job and a checking account. You can find a lender and get up to $5,000 cash as early as tomorrow at billshappen.com. Billshappen.com is the smart way to get a personal lender now. So if you need extra money for car repairs, medical bills, family emergencies, whatever you need cash for, go to billshappen.com and you can get the money you need as soon as the next day, up to $5,000. At billshappen.com, our process is safe, secure, and all online. No one to deal with in person. And Bills Happen does not charge you any fees to use our service. It's easy. When you need a lender, just remember, when bills happen, go to billshappen.com. Billshappen.com for the cash you need now. Billshappen.com.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. It's Tenacious Tuesdays on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show here at KBLA Talk 1580. Our very special guest in this hour is Bishop Joseph W. Tolton. Bishop Tolton is a global faith leader and foreign policy expert who brings moral clarity and strategic insight to this political movement. In our next hour, attorney Barbara Arnwine will be on the grind on Tenacious Tuesday with our most tenacious host, Barbara Arnwine. We're going to cover everything, especially what's taking place in Texas, especially those newly migrated lawmakers from the state of Texas who now find themselves in Illinois, I believe also in New York, running from Governor Abbott, who has placed them along with his associates under arrest, and they're fugitives from the law. And tomorrow, Atiba Madian is bringing a state representative, Tony Rose, to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. She too is on the run from arrest from the governor of the state of Texas. And we plan to have an amazing show tomorrow with Atiba Madian. I'm very excited about that. Bishop Tolton, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
So good to be back with you.
Bishop, I am your breadth of knowledge of this subject matter is so extraordinary. I don't think we can get it all in an hour. So I have shared with our producer, and I've already texted during the break, Nee Quarterly Quartet, that thank you for making the recommendation of Bishop Tolton on our program, because I hope to invite you back as many times as you'd like on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Bishop, let me travel, if I can, quickly with you around the world. The immigrant crisis is rattling our cities. It's of concern. It's in the body politic. It's also a wedge issue. Your thoughts. By the way, I leave about 3 or 4 minutes towards the end for a word of hope for our guests before the hour ends. So I'm going to try and squeeze this question in so that I can leave you an opportunity to bless our audience.
In 1906, on Azusa Street in Los Angeles, California, in February of that year, we experienced what we call the Second Pentecost. It was a moment in America where people spoke in other tongues, and it was the first time that we had heard that kind of ecstatic language spoken. I am deeply convinced that that experience happened in America. And let's talk about the speaking of tongues. Pentecost is a moment in the Bible in which every tongue under the sun was heard. It was a moment in which equity was not only embraced, but celebrated, where all people were able to come together under the banner of Christ as one people. Despite cultural differences, they were able to tap into spiritual unity. We saw Pentecostalism realize itself again in 1906. I deeply believe that the context in which that Pentecost happened was uniquely American because America was a place that was made up of such a diverse group of people with streams coming from everywhere, including those of us who were of African American descent who were formerly enslaved. I believe that the political idea of democracy that really invites in all of those that are different is deeply connected to why we experience this particular religious explosion around Pentecost here in this country. I think it is really unfortunate that we don't continue to embrace this idea of America being what we used to call this great melting pot. It is so unfortunate that we are turning our back on one of the things that makes America truly great, and that is our embrace of the all. This should be a place where immigrants should be coming from around the world to create a society that benefits from the uniqueness that each person or culture brings. That is what makes America ultimately strong. And it is heartbreaking to me as a progressive Pentecostal to witness so many who claim to be Pentecostal shutting down the walls of immigration and not welcoming the stranger, which is at the heart of the message of Jesus Christ. It is not only un-Pentecostal, it is un-American.
Bishop, you know, when I reflect upon the history of the world, I summarize it in a simple sentence, that history is more of a history of unfreedom than it is a history of freedom. And the idea of America, 265 years old or thereabouts, or just a little younger, is a unique idea in human history. This idea of freedom, this idea of the all, this idea of people of diverse walks of life coming together to celebrate, really to celebrate their differences, for me to acknowledge mine, for me to acknowledge yours, for you to acknowledge mine, and vice versa. And the global melting pot idea, the vegetable soup where every one of us maintains our flavor, we maintain our culture. This isn't tomato soup. This is vegetable soup. The peas are different than the lima beans. We know something different that we've eaten when we had the soup. But it's such a beautiful coming together in human history. It's unique. It doesn't happen in China. It doesn't happen in Japan.
That's right.
It doesn't happen in most African countries. It doesn't happen in Europe. America is a new idea of freedom. Bishop, in our final closing moments, is there hope for America?
There indeed is hope for America. We don't talk enough about the fact that Jesus was a rabbi who lived under colonial rule. And it was important to the empire that the different factions or different nations or people who were oppressed were kept separate and turned on each other. The message of the Christ was a unifying message because he said that the gospel was for whosoever would believe. So when the woman at the well, who was not a Jew, came for healing, he extended mercy and grace. His message of social justice and personal healing had great appeal beyond the Jewish people. The Roman Empire crucified him because his message was one that was going to create social cohesion, which would lead to spiritual unity, which would lead to a political force that could challenge the Roman Empire. I deeply believe that as Jesus contended with the Roman Empire's version of Project 2025 and overcame it with his message of whosoever will, there is yet a message stirring in the hearts of the American people that this is a country that is built on the greatness of diversity and equity. We are a place that is unique and a great idea that invites the many into becoming one, but not blurred into obscurity, but enjoying the uniqueness of who we are as individuals while yet creating customs that do unify us. I deeply believe that there is hope. I believe that a progressive political Pentecostal revival is imminent. And I do believe that it will emerge in this country and it will subsume the work of white Christian nationalism. Yes, Brother Jackson, indeed there is hope.
Bishop Tolton, thank you for being on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you so kindly for having me, my brother.
You're welcome anytime.
Thank you.
I do want to comment about the importance of what the bishop had to say. I have about 1 minute and 30 seconds remaining in the program. Yesterday, we were blessed to have Dr. Obery Hendricks on our program. And in his book, The Politics of Jesus, he talked about calling the demon exactly what it is, by name. Yesterday, Obery Hendricks used the term evil. Evil is what we're seeing in a very high place in our nation. And what you heard today from Bishop Tolton is quite the opposite idea. That there is power in possibility. That there is hope. That there can be this Azusa, this Pentecostal moment where we all understand everybody. It may not be the proverbial speaking in tongues that we practice in some of our Christian denominations, but it may be another level of reaching human understanding, a different core, a place that we haven't been. Lyndon Johnson seemed to suggest that there are these turning points in history: Lexington, Concord, Appomattox, and yes, he referred to Selma, Alabama as one of those turning points. There are more turning points in American history. There are more turning points in our lives. There are more turning points where we can turn to each other and not on each other and make a difference. We can be the change that we want to see in the world. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward, On the Grind with Barbara Arnwine on Tenacious Tuesdays on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Misty Jordan with BIN News Now. Democrats who fled Texas to stop congressional redistricting are vowing to fight on. Black Texas Democratic Congressman Al Green said he'll keep fighting.
They'll do it if we only stand by and watch them. But if we take a stand, we can stop them.
Governor Greg Abbott has ordered the state's Department of Public Safety to arrest House Democrats who were not present for the special legislative session Monday. Cat Williams is set to be the on-course correspondent for the PGA Tour event this weekend. Williams will join PGA Tour Live for the FedEx St. Jude Championship in Memphis. Williams will walk the course on Thursday and Friday. And Birmingham, Alabama's black mayor vowed to give some parents $500 each if their kids are in class the first day of school. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Is your concrete cracking? Is your uneven walkway dangerous? Do you need to level that concrete porch or patio? Contact Groundworks, the concrete lifting experts. Riverside, get your free inspection today. Learn more at groundworks.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
When the preseason top 25 college football rankings came out Tuesday morning, USC and UCLA were not included. Neither team impressed the analysts enough to merit a top 25 ranking. USC is coming off a 7-6 season. UCLA was 5-7 last year. Both teams have a lot of work to do this season to change the thinking of college football analysts and their fan base. USC and UCLA are entering their second year in the Big Ten Conference. Administrators at Prairie View A&M and HBCU near Houston had to make a very tough decision. The school dropped its men's and women's tennis programs. The main reason was finances. Players on both teams will be allowed to keep their scholarship if they stay at Prairie View. Things do not seem to be getting any better for Shedeur Sanders with the Cleveland Browns. Deion Sanders listed fourth on the depth chart for the Browns' 5 quarterbacks in training camp. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Give people what they want. At KBLA Talk 1580, we aim to foster enlightening, sustainable, restorative dialogue, and we welcome unapologetically progressive viewpoints that empower fellow citizens. We are now accepting submissions for KBLA Talk 1580 guest editorials like this one.
With the KBLA Talk 1580 guest editorial, I'm Martin Gordon, chair of the Pasadena Community Coalition. Recently, I listened to a Tavis Smiley Show conversation with James Farr. James said something that caught me off guard. Black Altadena is gone. My community is being murdered. I said murdered.
All you have to do is go to our website homepage at kbla1580.com and click on the icon that says KBLA Guest Editorials to learn more about our editorial standards and content submission guidelines. As long as the topic aligns with our mission, we are happy to review your submission and consider it for broadcast. We can't make any promises, but we want to amplify progressive perspectives that are community-focused and solution-oriented. So go to KBLA1580.com right now to download all the information you need about our guest editorials. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome back to Tenacious Tuesdays on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, KBLA Talk 1580. Our regular contributing host, it feels like I spoke with her yesterday, but it was a week ago. Barbara Arnwine is the president and founder of the Transformative Justice Coalition. She's internationally renowned for contributions on criminal justice issues, including the passage of the landmark Civil Rights Act of 1991 and the 2006 reauthorization of provisions of the Voting Rights Act. Currently, she serves as co-chair and facilitator of the National Commission for Voter Justice, the Millennial Voters Matters convenings, and the Voting Rights Alliance. Barbara, I'm going to go through as much of your resume today as possible, but I want to dive right in. Most of your friends in Texas are hiding in Illinois and hiding in New York. Barbara, what's going on? And welcome forward to your show on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Well, we got a maniac in the presidency who has had the nerve to tell the people, the state legislature in Texas, that they got to create 5 partisan, totally GOP partisan gerrymandered districts so that he can hold on to the House because he knows he's in trouble for the midterms. And these people said, okay, Massa, whatever you want. And they went ahead mid-decade and decided that they're going to create these 5 very partisan districts that will take away Democratic seats and give them to the GOP. It doesn't matter. The people of Texas now have voted in their legislators already, but they're just going to change it up and change up the whole map so that those people can't get elected anymore if they're Democrats, and only GOP members can get elected. So that means all the people of Texas who want to vote for a Democrat, they're in trouble because they made it now where there's no way you can elect a Democrat to a U.S. congressional seat. So that proposal went ahead. Now, mind you, Jesse Jackson Jr., that all this time while this is going on, people are calling me, Barbara, where's the hearings? How do I go to a hearing so I hear they're going to do something with the maps. How can I go to a hearing? Barbara, where's the maps? Where's the maps? When do you think they released the map? They released the map the day they were ready to vote on it, people. Come on, this isn't democracy. This is demagoguery. And it's called fellowship, not statesmanship, not, trying to take care of the people of your state. Mind you, everybody, the special session in which they are trying to do this evil gerrymandering, partisan gerrymandering, check this out. That special section was to be about what has been in the news regarding Texas, the floods. It was to be about how to give money, how to help create a better system, so you won't have 100 people dead the next time there's a flood. It was how to create an alert system. What happened to the Biden money? What happened to the Obama money that they were given to do this? How can they do what that money was meant to accomplish? Yet, because that makes Abbott and the crew look bad, that's Governor Greg Abbott, look bad, he decides that he's going to jump and follow whatever Trump says and make this all about redistricting. So because he is a horrible governor, and I can say that without any hesitation, he's done terrible things as governor, that he has been on this vengeance. So the Democrats said, okay, you're not going to have real hearings. You're going to impose a map on us at the last minute. And you're totally violating any sense of nonpartisanship. So we are going to leave the state because you can't pass your little ugly bill without a quorum. So we're going to deny you. There's enough of us that if we don't show up, you can't vote this plan into law. So the Democrats said, we're not going to stand for this. But they know from 2021, when they fled before, they know as a matter of fact that this governor, is hell-bent on, making sure that they engage in the most outrageous voter suppression, because then they were trying to pass this evil voter suppression law, and you might recall the Democrats fled then. And one thing they learned is that if you stayed in the state, they arrested you. They went and arrested people who were in their homes trying to have meals with their families, and arrested them and drug them to the state capitol to force them to vote. And so they knew that the only people who were really safe were the people who left the entire jurisdiction of the state of Texas, because their little warrants, which are worthless, been squashed in 2021, but their little warrants have no they are not effective, folks, outside of the state of Texas. So their little henchman regime does not extend to Illinois, to Massachusetts, to New York, where people have fled, and they probably have fled to other states. But I just want this to be very clear. There's nothing illegal with them fleeing. There's nothing, even though he's got Ken Paxton, their attorney general, out there talking about they're going to, quote, hunt them down, and arrest people, hunt them down. I'm not making this up, people. That's their language, that they're going to hunt them down and arrest them. So even though they're saying this, they really don't have any legal authority to do it.
Barbara,
so they're doing all kinds of evil to try to force this ugly bill and this horrible redistricting down the throats of the people of Texas.
Barbara, when we come forward, we're going to dive into some of the granular levels of this Texas issue, because I want to know what becomes of the majority-minority congressional districts under the plan. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. This is KBLA Talk 1580. When we come forward, more On the Grind with Barbara Arnwine on Tenacious Tuesdays.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Is reviewing life insurance on your to-do list? Now's the perfect time to add it. A friend recently told me that securing life insurance sooner rather than later can help you lock in lower rates for years to come. So I bumped this up on my list and got it done. I called SelectQuote and couldn't believe how easy and affordable life insurance is. I'm 40 and got a $500,000 policy for $16 a month. My husband's also 40, and his $500,000 policy was only $18 a month. Plus, with SelectQuote's same-day coverage, there was no medical exam required, and we were covered by the time we hung up. Knowing I have this checked off my list feels amazing, but the peace of mind knowing my family is protected feels even better.
Call SelectQuote at 1-800-729-7070. That's 1-800-729-7070. Or go to SelectQuote.com to get your free quote today. That's 1-800-729-7070. Details on example rate at SelectQuote.com.
Are you wet shaving? You'll get razor bumps.
Nah, Pops, I'm good with Gillette Skin Guard.
How long you been growing that beard mama hates anyway?
Since 77. I shaved and got ingrown so bad.
That's why I use the Gillette Skin Guard razor, face scrub, shave gel, and moisturizer. So I don't have to worry about new razor bumps or shaving irritation.
Gillette Skin Guard, huh? Your mama's gonna love this one.
The best a man can get keeps getting better with Gillette Skin Guard. Buy now at a retailer near you.
Following is a paid advertisement by Family Vacation Getaways with the purpose of soliciting sales of vacation ownership. For complete details, please visit fvgradio.com. If you want a 100% complimentary stay at a luxury resort in Cancun, airfare not included, then Family Vacation Getaways is your ticket to paradise. See website for complete details. We're giving away 5 days and 4 nights to the first 50 callers who can name an animal that lays eggs and is not a bird. An animal that lays eggs and is not a bird. Do you know it? Call now, 800-868-6431, 800-868-6431. You're also eligible for an exciting bonus vacation to Orlando, Florida for just $498. And don't worry about anything ruining your plans. We can extend your travel up to 18 months. Name an animal that lays eggs and is not a bird, and get a complimentary Cancun resort stay and an optional bonus vacation to Orlando for just $498. What are you waiting for? Call 800-868-6431, 800-868-6431, and give us your answer. The proceeding is not a contest and is a paid advertisement by Family Vacation Getaways and not sponsored by this program or its affiliates.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. We're on the grind today with Barbara Arnwine on Tenacious Tuesdays, and tomorrow on the Atiba Madian Show right here with Jesse Jackson Jr. Our special guest will be Texas State Representative Tony Rose. Tony is, Barbara, Tony has escaped from Texas.
All right now.
She's either, this is some 19th century stuff. Black people running from Texas, hiding from the governor in other states because the governor is telling them what to do. And they're like, the Negro people don't want to be present for that. I mean, the same state, Barbara, that gave us Juneteenth, right? Who, kept the idea of emancipation from Black people in the state of Texas. I do want to go to the granular level of the conversation we were having just before the break. And that is this. To redraw the state of Texas and to create more Republicans, it has to do damage to the congressional districts of Al Green, Jasmine Crockett, Mark Vesey, and Wesley Hunt. Barbara, for decades, you have participated. I know that Wade Henderson has participated and others in the drawing of these plans consistent with the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And then, of course, there is this liberal reaction, what California might do under Gavin Newsom, what Illinois might do, what Ms. Hochul might do in New York, what the governor of New Jersey is thinking about doing, and the cascading effect to Democrats fighting for more Democrats, which does not mean fighting for more Black Democrats. It means fighting for more Democrats, whatever that means, and people who do not speak for us. Barbara, let's go to the granular level of what the Texas plan does to these 4 Black districts in the state of Texas.
Well, not only to the Black districts, but remember there are Latino districts.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's not just the Black Texas legislators who have fled, is white and certainly a lot of Latinos. And the idea is that they would just take away these districts. They won't exist anymore. They listen, everybody, tomorrow, August 6th, is the 60th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Tomorrow, Wednesday, August 6th, is the 60th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act. Yes, the Voting Rights Act that John Lewis and Amelia Boynton Robinson and all the people got beat up trying to march from Selma to Montgomery on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. The Voting Rights Act that got its origins not only from that moment, but because Dr. King led the march from Selma to Montgomery, and President Lyndon Baines Johnson, who said, "Show me, make me pass a Voting Rights Act," said, "Okay, I'm gonna definitely. You done show me. I'm gonna pass it." So that happened 60 years ago. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 has been the most effective of all the civil rights acts that were passed in the 1960s. It literally has transformed the face of our government, where you went from having, not even a good two handfuls of blacks in the Congress to now having 60. You went from having, very little Latino representation to having more robust Latino, Asian, even having Native American Congress people. All of that is owed to the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The bottom line is that these people don't care. They hate that Voting Rights Act. I have talked about this Curtis Yarvin character. This is one of the things he hates the most, is the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And when you look at its progress, this is what they don't want. Remember, people, these folks are not about democracy. They don't believe in democracy. We are a Republican democracy, meaning that we're a representative, governmentally based democracy, not a direct democracy. And they want to take out that word democracy. They don't even really want the word Republican, because they don't want it to be representative. They want it to be who they want in power, only to do their bidding. And yes, it has, white supremacist roots in it. Yes, it has elitism in it, that they just think, a certain class of people who should be in legislatures, etc. But it's also just anti-democratic with the little d. They don't believe that the people should have a say in who governs them. They want to choose who they want to govern, and not allow the people to do what the Constitution guarantees them, which is the right to choose who they want to be governed by. So this is a real problem, folks. It is dangerous. And at the 60th anniversary of the voting rights, Jesse, how can this be happening, right?
It's almost,
go ahead.
It's almost unfathomable. I was just reflecting upon what you just said. And when I think about what led to Selma,
yes.
Remember now, James Orange was in Marion, Alabama, encouraging students to become deputy registrars.
Yes.
Register and vote. He was arrested in Marion, Alabama, a town that today still does not have streetlights. It's a sundown town. And there was a rumor going around town when he was arrested that night that there was going to be a lynching of a man who was in custody in Marion, Alabama, in the town square. So everybody gathered in the local African-American church. It's still standing there in Marion, Alabama. The police station and jail where he was arrested, it's still standing there. Now it's owned by the National Park Service of the United States. The courthouse is still there where they said they were going to string him up. And Jimmy Lee Jackson,
yes,
others came to
little Jimmy,
a veteran of a foreign war. They came out of church that night, and there were more than 200 Alabama State Police officers surrounding the church. To disperse the crowd, the Alabama State Police officers moved on the people, and Jimmy Lee Jackson's mother and father, I believe, took off running towards a restaurant not very far from the church.
Right.
To protect his mother, who slid into a corner of the restaurant, Jimmy Lee Jackson covered her with his body. And a state police officer shot Jimmy Lee Jackson, I believe, twice.
Damn.
He survived that shooting. But 3 days later, he succumbed to his wounds. Martin Luther King Jr., Andy Young, Ralph Abernathy, James Bevel, and others attended this funeral service and the memorial service of Jimmy Lee Jackson. That night, they determined that they were going to march from Selma to Montgomery.
Yes.
John Lewis led that march, met the state police officers on the other side of that bridge, and the rest is history. To this day, the Ku Klux Klan and Night Riders use the tombstone of Jimmy Lee Jackson as target practice.
Yes.
I can take you to Marion, Alabama right now and show you
Yes.
this site with holes in his tomb.
Oh, yes.
This is the foundation of the Voting Rights Act itself.
Yes.
Should we forget, because we did not live during that era, that when the march was over, Viola Luizzo, a white woman, was shuddering, or if you will, shuttling African Americans and others from the march from Selma back to Montgomery, when she got pulled over on the highway and had her brains blown out at point blank range and called a nigger lover. That's the foundation of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So when Lyndon Johnson says, at times, history and fate meet at a single place in a single time. Was it Lexington? Yes. Was it Concord? Yes. Was it Appomattox? Yes. He said, but history and fate met last night or last week in Selma, Alabama. And don't forget the death of Reverend James Reeb during that same period.
Absolutely.
So this amazing spirit of death around the right to vote laid the foundation for the seminal piece of legislation that changed the course of American history and is largely responsible, as Barbara Arnwine has said, for the modern era. Barbara?
Yes. And everybody remember this number, 2 to 5%. 2 to 5%. What is that number? 2 to 5% is the number of African Americans who were registered in Alabama before the 1965 Voting Rights Act.
Wow.
2 to 5%. Georgia, 2 to 5%. Go across the South to 1965, and that was the operative number,
So
state
you're
by
saying,
state.
Barbara, you're saying that African Americans were somewhere between 2% and 5% of registered voters
That's
before
right.
the Voting Rights Act of 1965. from
That's
Virginia around to
right.
Texas.
That's right.
Wow.
And that's where they want to take us back to. If you think I'm kidding, if you think I'm exaggerating, then you watch. They are determined to take us back to that period. If they could get rid of the Voting Rights Act, and by the way, folks, 2 big cases before the Supreme Court this year that could very well kill the Voting Rights Act. One is the Turtle Mountain case, for which they have not granted cert yet, but we expect cert to be sought, and the court just gave a stay in that case a month ago. And that's the case that said there's no private right of action under Section 2, which is the liability section of the Voting Rights Act. Meaning, if you're not liable, you can't be sued. And they're saying that even if they tell me that they won't give me a ballot because I'm black, I can't sue under the Voting Rights Act. That is so evil, because if you take away the private right of action, 90% of all cases under the Voting Rights Act are brought by private parties. You take away that ability to act is a nullity. Not only has the evil Eighth Circuit issued the Turtle Mountain decision, they just issued another decision last week called United Arkansas United. And in that decision, they said not only is there no private right of action for racial discrimination and other blatant discrimination, there's no private right of action if you sue because you need assistance at the polls, either because you're disabled, either because you are unable to read or write, or you just need assistance. They said there's no private right of action when localities deny you that right either. So these people just don't believe that there should be a Voting Rights Act. That case is going to be before the Supreme Court. And guess who's saying, please, please give it to us? Gorsuch, Alito, Thomas, saying, yeah, we want to make that the law of the land.
Not Uncle
Folks,
Thomas.
Yes, and 23 state attorney generals have signed on to various briefs around the country saying this should be the law of the land, that there is no private right of action, that unless Pam Bondi and somebody in the Justice Department decides they want to bring a case, which they rarely do, then there is no case. So they're trying to kill this act. The other big case is on redistricting. Once again, they're taking up this issue. Can you have majority black districts? Can you have majority minority districts that are Latino? Can you have them? So that's also up again before the court. So there are two big cases that they're going to be considering. Remember, they had this case of Calais this year. Calais, but they decided to punt it even after, get ready for this, even after they had full arguments in the case. And instead of deciding it, they punted it over to this year. Why do you think? I think it's because they want to combine it. They want to rule it back to back on this private right of action issue. So, folks, this is a pivotal moment. Don't tell me that had you been alive in 1965, that you would have been out there ahead of John Lewis. I would have been out in that street, Jesse. I would have been leading the whole thing. If you're not doing anything right now to fight in this moment, then the lie has been put to your representations. We need you in the streets. We need everybody in the streets. We need to be very active in protecting this act, because as it took our street action to get it, it's going to take our street action to keep it.
Barbara, we have a little less than 1 minute, probably about 50 seconds here. The idea, though, that this could change the lines of congressional districts before the primary elections in 2026 is unusual. About 40 seconds. Give me 40 seconds on that, Barbara.
No, it's what's happening in Texas is just absolutely outrageous, because mid-decade redistricting is frowned upon. It's rare. Texas is clearly doing this only because the president of the United States said that he wants it done. I mean, whatever happened to representing your voters and in the best interest of your state? So you rather people die again in a flood and have no protection than to take care of the people and allow them to vote and have the representatives of their choice. People, we are at a seminal stage right now. We ought to preserve and keep this democracy and move it towards a better, more representative, more multiracial democracy, or we fail. And if we fail, this country fails.
We are on the grind with Barbara Arnwine. It's Tenacious Tuesdays on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. More with Barbara when we come back.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Misty Jordan with BIN News Now. Sadly, school shootings may be top of mind as the first day of class approaches. A high-tech company called Zero Eyes is providing some Florida school districts with an AI system that detects a weapon on a live security feed.
The moment you pull a gun out, in about 3 to 5 seconds, local law enforcement will already have that to action.
Sam Alimo of Zero Eyes said the system has identified thousands of real and fake guns brought to schools and other locations nationwide. Black NFL running back Saquon Barkley turned down the president's offer to team up. The Eagle star declined President Trump's invitation to join a 30-member council on sports, fitness, and nutrition. He said he couldn't commit due to time constraints. And more than 9 million people in the southeast are under a flood watch as rain and thunderstorms will impact the region over the next few days. Get BIN News now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Is your concrete cracking? Is your uneven walkway dangerous? Do you need to level that concrete porch or patio? Contact Groundworks, the concrete lifting experts. Riverside, get your free inspection today. Learn more at groundworks.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
When the preseason top 25 college football rankings came out Tuesday morning, USC and UCLA were not included. Neither team impressed the analysts enough to merit a top 25 ranking. USC is coming off a 7-6 season UCLA was 5-7 last year. Both teams have a lot of work to do this season to change the thinking of college football analysts and their fan base. USC and UCLA are entering their second year in the Big Ten Conference. Administrators at Prairie View A&M and HBCU near Houston had to make a very tough decision. The school dropped its men's and women's tennis programs. The main reason was finances. Players on both teams will be allowed to keep their scholarship if they stay at Prairie View. Things do not seem to be getting any better for Shedeur Sanders with the Cleveland Browns. Deion Sanders is listed fourth on the depth chart for the Browns' 5 quarterbacks in training camp. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, aka the Voice of Reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the Voice of Reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Nearly 7 million Americans aged 65 and older are living with Alzheimer's disease, also known as AD, a type of dementia that affects memory, thinking, and behavior, making everyday tasks challenging. But did you know that Black adults aged 65 and older are twice as likely as white adults to develop AD? There are things you can do to help reduce your risk for developing AD. Managing conditions like diabetes and high blood pressure is crucial. Staying physically active, maintaining social connections, eating a healthy diet, and keeping your mind engaged with activities like reading or puzzles can all contribute to brain health. It's also important to recognize some common signs and symptoms of early AD, such as forgetfulness that causes problems with everyday life, asking the same question a few times in a row, and difficulty concentrating on basic tasks. If you see these signs in yourself or a loved one, don't wait. Early diagnosis and intervention are key to managing AD effectively. To learn more about AD and a potential treatment option, visit treatalzearly.com. That's treatalzearly.com. This message is brought to you by AZI.
Your child is 18, and suddenly you no longer have legal access to their medical info, even in an emergency. No health decisions, no financial help, nothing, unless you plan ahead. That's why Trust and Will created the Young Adult Plan. It includes HIPAA authorization, healthcare directives, and power of attorney. Everything your child needs to stay protected and stay connected. Go to trustandwill.com and get your Young Adult Plan for just $69. Because turning 18 shouldn't mean cutting parents out of the picture. Trust and Will is an online estate planning service. See website for details.
Trust and Will. Some things can steal your sunshine.
Ugh, I just got my hair done.
Sorry, the cooler's broken. Anyone see my flip-flops? Anyone?
But COVID-19 can steal a lot more. I just took a COVID test. Ugh. Prescription medications for COVID exist. If you test positive this summer, ask your doctor if they're right for you. Visit PfizerForAll.com/COVID-19 to learn more. Sponsored by Pfizer.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580. Our very special co-host and guest on Tenacious Tuesdays is attorney Barbara Arnwine. She's on the grind. Barbara, welcome forward to the show.
It's good to be here.
Barbara, let me push back a little bit on some assumptions. And I've got some experience in this. When I was first elected to Congress, I had been there a number of terms before Rahm Emanuel showed up with a great idea that liberal Democrats should raise a lot of money for conservative Democrats so that they can expand the number of conservative Democrats, put those districts in play so that we could gain a House majority. And there are times when I really want to just pop him upside his head because I knew conservative Democrats coming to Congress aren't voting for what I stand for. They're just not. They're from Dixie. They may run in competitive districts. They may vote one time for the Speaker of the House, but they oppose most of my agenda for my communities when they get there. They are very difficult to deal with. In fact, I found it easier to work with Henry Hyde and Newt Gingrich and others than I did some conservative Democrats. That's just a fact. Now, with this stuff going on in Texas and in these red state legislatures, I want to be clear and help everyone within the sound of our voices be clear that the Voting Rights Act of 1965 saw Democrats and Republicans in state legislatures drawing congressional districts and state representative districts to benefit themselves. That has been the history of this process since the inception of the nation. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 says to Democrats and Republicans, you all need to draw these districts in such a way as to give these minority populations an equal opportunity of getting elected to Congress, which means because of racial segregation, these lines where all these little black communities are together and flipped over here on the other side of the highway, you can draw the lines in a way to gather those communities together and form something called a majority minority district, right? It's not all black. It can be 40%, it can be 50%, it can be majority, minority, but it's different. Now watch this, Barbara. I'm not running into the hands of the Democratic proposals, either by Governor Newsom, Pritzker, or Ms. Hochul, without a serious suspicion as an African American that somehow we are going to lose representation so the Democrats can have the Democrats that they define as Democrats, which may or may not be us, so that they can have control of something. That's just a segregated Congress by another name. The Voting Rights Act took into account that Republicans and Democrats had a history of practicing racial discrimination in the drawing of these districts in the first place. And therefore, our interests, as Congressman Bill Clay once said, there are no permanent friends. There are no permanent enemies, just permanent interests. Our interests in this regard may not be in the Democratic Party, Barbara.
Well, that's not what I was talking about. Listen, I want everybody to be very clear that I've sued as many Democrats as I've sued Republicans. Because there is, white supremacy belongs to no party.
That's right.
It doesn't even belong to any particular class. It is just a inbred DNA fabric of this society. So I have had to sue, all these folks. And I'm not a fan of conservative Democrats. If we hadn't had Joe Manchin and Sinema sitting up in the Democratic Party, Manchin kind of independent in the voting quote with the Democratic Party, we would have passed the Freedom to Vote Act. We would have passed the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act that was just reintroduced in Congress 2 weeks ago. If those had passed, you and I wouldn't even have a conversation right now. Because it was the failure of those conservative Democrats. And it was a failure of Biden, President Biden, to understand that the Congress that you and I are looking at right now isn't even the Congress you served in. I'm sorry. It's a totally different Congress.
That's right.
These folks on the GOP side, they are totally, what would you call it, filtered down to MAGA. And if they are not MAGA, they aren't wanted in that party. This all started with the Freedom Caucus, and they went through a distillation process of getting rid of anybody who was moderate, anyone who wasn't full-flown MAGA. And this year we've seen a consolidation of MAGA within the GOP. The Democrats still run a range. They run a range of different kinds of progressives, liberals, moderates, conservatives, blue dog, leftovers, whatever. They still run a range. And therein lies the problem, right? That's why they haven't been able to muster a good, solid opposition.
Yeah.
And if they had more of that filtering, more of that distillation ideologically, then they would be a heck of a lot more, forward. I mean, the problem to me, I see a different ideological problem. What I see is that the Dem base, the people who constitute the base of the party, are more progressive and oppositional than the actual Congress people who sit in office. And so you got a party where its leadership and a lot of its membership is not as progressive as the people it represents. And therein lies the problem. That's why you have, when the polls come out and you see these horrible polls saying that, people, don't trust the Democrats, don't like them, whatever. A lot of that is Democratic voters who are mad that the Democrats are so quiet and not oppositional enough. They're not doing what Texas did. Somebody called me and said, should the people in Texas a week ago, if they move with these maps and they're as unfairly treated as it looks like people are going to be, and if they do these maps, should they leave? Should they flee? Or should they just, go through the machinations and make some floor speeches, etc.? And I said they better flee. They better get the hell out of there. But it just shows you, how those kind of issues are still out there. That people are not, understanding that when you're at war and the other side has told you that they're at war on you, and you decide that the only answer to that war is for you to, quote, give floor speeches and tell people that you're opposed, you better come up with some other strategies.
Let me just add this to Barbara because we got to go forward.
Yes.
I want to say that we've seen what you just said in the Mondami race in New York. And, I don't talk about it often on the show. I talk about it never on the show. In fact, a poll was recently done in my particular congressional district, and I'm beating the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is on one side, I'm over here. And the Democratic Party is not doing well in the 2nd Congressional District of Illinois. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward, more with attorney Barbara Arnwine on Tenacious Tuesdays. She's on the grind.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
It's never too early to start talking about money in realistic ways with your kids. JP Morgan Chase navigates how to educate your kids now about creating long-lasting, healthy money habits. Whether your kids are in elementary school, high school, or college, now is a great time to start a conversation about ways to create healthy money habits as they grow, ultimately benefiting their financial future. Talking about money in a realistic way to support your kids' lifestyle and dreams, your first banking account geared towards high school or college. It's never too early. Explaining the basics, what you earn and what you spend, building financial confidence starts with getting organized. Learning and practicing vital money skills now will stay with them for life. tools they will have to stay on top of their finances and achieve their goals. This segment is sponsored by JP Morgan Chase.
Ron had a tax problem he just couldn't handle on his own.
I owed the IRS taxes for over 5 years, but I didn't have any money to pay the taxes.
Those years cost him dearly.
Most of it was fees and interest. It was horrible.
Ron finally called in the pros.
I called Optima Tax Relief, and boy, am I happy I did.
The leading tax resolution firm, Optima, is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau. They've resolved over $1 billion for their clients. Ron was overjoyed.
They settled my account with IRS. I was ecstatic. They are a lifesaver. They are. I am so happy.
Take Ron's advice and call Optima now for a free consultation.
Yeah, don't do like I did and wait. Call Optima Tax Relief. Do it now. You'll be ecstatic like me.
Call 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077.
Optima Tax Relief.
Testimonial from an actual client. Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Our Wealthy Wednesday tomorrow with our special contributor, Atiba Madian, is unlike any other Wealthy Wednesday we've had. Texas State Representative Jolanda Jones, Texas State Representative Tom Rose, Reverend Dr. S. Todd Urey, all join Atiba Madian on our show, the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. These are men and women who have escaped the state of Texas and are standing literally with their finger in the dike in their preservation of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. If Texas rolls, and they are trying to roll for Donald Trump, the state of California is likely to roll, and there will be a cascading rolling of Voting Rights Act districts across this country, significantly impacting the quality of representation of African Americans, if not cutting the Congressional Black Caucus in half. It certainly happened during first Reconstruction, and it can certainly happen again. Who would have imagined, Barbara Arnwine, that we would find ourselves in a first Reconstruction scenario where we had a Congressional Black Caucus after the 15th Amendment to the Constitution, and then the Tilden Hayes Compromise, and then Plessy versus Ferguson, and then we were no more. Barbara Arnwine.
Well, in 2011, when I issued the map of shame, and I was ridiculed right and left, because I said that if the voter suppression that was beginning all around the country at that time, if it succeeded, that it would determine not only presidential elections, but it could result in the total erosion of American democracy. Because what you would see is people saying, let's follow the South African model, which is to have a minority of whites be controlling the majority of the population by artificial means of disenfranchisement. And when I said that, people thought I was insane. Now we are years later, and all of a sudden people who told me not to utter the words voter suppression are running around with them on their t-shirts and trying to tell me about voter suppression like they've forgotten the history. So I just, that's life, right? So what I want to be very clear about is that we are at this pivotal moment. As the demographics have shifted, people are more desperate to hold on to their power, and they will do it. What you're going to see across the country is a hardening, right? A hardening of partisanship. You're going to see, something that we saw, right before the Civil War. And it's a question for us about how do we stop all of this from getting out of control. We're in a redistricting war right now, where everybody's racing to figure out how to sharpen their partisan lines in order to control the House. So that is, we're going to see that. But at the same time, we have to decide. Everybody that I know right now should be doing one thing. Everyone listening should be doing one thing, thinking about how the heck you're going to contribute to success in voting in November 2025, and how you're going to organize to have success in 2026. It may be our last chance, but it is definitely it's a moment that we can't allow to get away from us. And I'm just going to say that that's where we are, people. This court's going to do what they're going to do. Hopefully they don't go all the way crazy, but I think I see them chipping even harder at the Voting Rights Act, making it less effective, less able to be maintained and implemented and enforced. But what I do want people to know is that the one thing you can't do is just say, I'm going to sit back and do nothing. I need you. I need you in those streets with us. I need you in this battle.
Let me ask you this question, and we have about 7 minutes, and there'll be plenty of time for your word of hope at the end. But Barbara, I want to ask you about what becomes of the lower court cases. When I was in Congress, I drew the congressional district after the census in 2000. The plan was implemented in 2002. We drew the districts in 2010. The plan was in the census in 2010. We drew the district, and the plan was implemented in 2012. We're looking at something unusual now. Usually, we have a decade to raise the money to defend our state's plan against the Voting Rights Act of 1965, in support of it, or wherever the Voting Rights Act might be perceived to be delinquent or deficient. Those have tended to be the mid-decade, decennial, if you will, cases regarding the Voting Rights Act. But the Texas plan and what we're looking at right now, the timing is particularly curious, because everybody is running for Congress. They're fighting for their own political survival. And now we are looking at challenges in multiple jurisdictions. I can only imagine that some kind of fund has to be set up with tens of millions of dollars in it in order to establish records at the lower court level and at the appellate court level, so that any disparate impact or compelling interest in the creation of these districts can be shown that work their way up to the Supremes. Barbara, that's normally the process. I don't see that leadership coming from Hispanics or Blacks in the Congress of the United States right now.
Well, they gotta do it. I mean, my whole problem is it's not just the Black and the Hispanics, because they're not the majority of the Congress. It's everybody. I think people let the GOP get away with murder, because people say, oh, well, they're just gonna be stupid. Let them be stupid. No, they need to be held accountable. And it's wrong for us to only fuss at Dems, because they're not as bad as those folks who passed that, quote, big ugly bill. I think that we got to be real about what's going on. I have, issues with everybody, but the bottom line is that this court is going to decide that Calais case this term, I should say, and they're going to decide Turtle Mountain this term. That's going to tell us everything about the Voting Rights Act, if it has any viability. But I don't want to leave this show without saying something, because I had one goal to make sure that I say one thing. I'm from Los Angeles, as everybody knows. I'm a native born, Southern Californian, Long Beach, Compton, Watts, South Central, you name it, that's me. I went to, the Scripps College for Women out of the Claremont colleges. And I went to George Washington High School, now called the Academy. Generals. So I want everybody to know that as a Californian, as a Los Angeles, as a Angelino, I have a whole lot of concerns about what ICE is doing and what's happening in California right now. And I want to give a shout out to everybody who was featured in the New York Times opinion piece that came out this weekend for all the work that they're doing against. It came out on July 30th. I want to give all the credit for everybody who is mentioned in that article, to Elizabeth Castillo, to Pablo Alvarado, who I've been who I went to Rockwood with, to all of them. I want to give credit for all and so many more who are out there defending the people in the streets of California from ICE, and who are saying that this illegal occupation needs to end, who are protecting people's rights, who have helped, to families in crisis, who are dealing with this total onslaught of this Trump administration against the people of California, the people of Los Angeles. Fellow Angelinos, much love. We got work to do. I want to just, put my heart out there to you. That's why we're fighting, this whole ICE around the nation. That's why, we're engaged in opposition to alligator Alcatraz, which Kristi Noem now says she wants to make the norm, the model for all immigrant detention centers, which we call concentration camps, rightfully. We're going to sue. We're going to do everything we can to stop and slow this process down. And now they've had to admit, you saw this weekend, that they had to admit from the Trump administration, they always do this stuff on weekends so it doesn't hit the big news, that they can't arrest enough people to meet the quotas that they set. That those quotas are too high. They finally admitted what we always knew, that was just a lie about all these, quote, criminals and all these, quote, undocumented people who had no jobs and was just driving the welfare up, all the rest of it. We knew that wasn't true. And so now they're having to admit this stuff, but they still won't stop. So much love, Pablo. Much love, Elizabeth. Much love, everybody in Los Angeles.
I want to give a shout out to the mayor, Karen Bass, my former colleague, who is
You got it. Who has been, very strong, and I'm not, 100% in agreement with everything that your governor does, but shout out to the governor also for backing the people of LA.
And Congresswoman Karmlager Dove. She's been doing a heck of a job.
Yes.
We are
yes.
That delegation.
Much love, LA.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You've been listening to Barbara Online on the Grind, KBLA Talk 1580. When we come forward, it will be tomorrow on Wealthy Wednesdays. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. And now back to KBLA.
I'm Misty Jordan with BIN News Now. Sadly, school